Hang on.
Is there somebody in development services upstairs that could assist Mr.
Hang
Shrimpling?
on. I think I got to have it open. Okay. Yeah, okay.
There you go, Ryan.
You can see it.
Yeah, it's, you
Is
just
it
need
the
to
whole screen or?
put it in the slideshow mode.
Okay. There we go. How's that look?
Got it.
Good.
Are we still waiting for Robbie?
I am on.
Okay, I must have missed you. Sorry.
Just got on.
So I think all the council members are on. I heard Shelley, and then I think I see everybody else.
Be funny. Oh,
There's Anna. Oh, can't hear Anna. Somebody help Anna.
If we have a couple minutes while we're working out the details, I wanted to share with council just a little bit about some stuff that's going on with the TDD up at North Point on Kings Highway. Kings Highway north of the Lexington Mount Auburn intersection. There's a North Point subdivision up there, which you're aware of. They've been trying to get a TDD to eventually use TDD money, transportation development money, to add a signal at that intersection. There's been some opposition to it. And just in the last couple of days, there's been some understanding or some concern about some position of MoDOT that they were going to put in a median barrier between the two signals. So yesterday we had a meeting with MoDOT, and then this morning they met while we were meeting, and I think came to an agreement that they would initially not have to have, it would not initially put in a median barrier, but reserve the right to review that every 5 years. And also if there's a redevelopment on the south side, that we try to combine entrances and maybe do a backage road there to help with the access in the future. So I'm going to sign a letter that says that basically MoDOT can today, if they want to, put a median barrier out there. It's really, they have the authority to do that. So agreeing that we won't do it initially, and that they can review it every 5 years, I don't think it's a whole lot to give. And it would be smart for us if we redevelop that property, as a whole, or even individually, try to combine some entrances. So I don't think we're really agreeing to anything that we wouldn't do anyway, but I did want to make you aware of it in case, I know there's been quite a bit of chatter about it, and some of that chatter may reach your ears. And so I wanted you to know about it if you hear about it over the weekend.
And I just sent council the drawings on it and the information.
Thank you. Are we ready to go, Molly?
I think we're ready to go. Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. This afternoon on our agenda, we have two big topics that we'd like to cover with you. The first is the comprehensive plan, and the second topic is reinventing government. We will have Ryan lead us in the comprehensive plan discussion. I want to just kick it off by saying a couple of things about the comprehensive plan. One, this is something that's been in the works for the last few years. You've all heard about it in the past, and I know it's taken longer to complete than we had liked, but there's a couple of reasons for that. One, this is a long-range planning document, and it sets the foundation for us moving forward for the next 10 or 15 years. So it's really critical that we got it right. We really wanted to make sure that the future land use map was accurate. We wanted to make sure that the action items that we included were on point, because this is the document that we're going to use, that staff's going to use, the Planning and Zoning Commission, the council for the next 10 or 15 years. So we spent a lot of time, Ryan spent a lot of time making sure that it was right. And I really do mean Ryan, because he poured everything into this plan, and it really should be Ryan's comprehensive plan on the cover sheet, because he's the one that made it all happen. Also, we had some delays with our consultant that we had to work through. And then, of course, this year we've had cyber attack and COVID and all sorts of complicating factors that contributed to the delay. But it is approved now. Ryan is going to give you an overview. Some of this information you may have heard last year during our retreat. Some of that's going to be repeated because we do have some new council members that aren't as familiar with the plan. So we want to give everyone a refresher and provide everyone with the background of how we got to where we are. And then we really want to focus on the action items in the plan and have some discussion about what you think are the highest priority action items that you would like us to focus on in the near future. If you noticed in the plan, we did prioritize high, medium, low. What we thought and what the public and the Comprehensive Plan Oversight Committee thought were priority levels, but we would like to hear that from you because priorities shift and change. And so we would like to get a little bit more input from the council on where you would like us to focus our efforts. So with that, I know it's a very large document. I don't know if you've had time in the last couple of days to peruse the entire thing, but Ryan will give you the highlights, and then we'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have moving forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ryan and he can take it away.
Thank you, Molly. Can everyone hear me all right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good, thanks. Molly stole my thunder, so I really don't need to give much of an introduction. Suffice it to say, this presentation will seem very familiar to those of you that were at the council retreat last year. The main difference being that it's now updated because the document has been adopted. The zoning code states that the Planning and Zoning Commission is responsible for adopting the comprehensive plan, and they did that at their July 8th meeting. So this is in its final form, as opposed to last year when I was talking about it in the context of being still in process. So what you have now is a formal document that is official and is ready to use. All right. Okay, so some of you may be wondering what a comprehensive plan is. There's a couple different names for it. Different communities call it different things. Some refer to theirs as a general plan or a master plan. Whatever they call it, it's essentially the same thing. It's a foundational document for a local government, and it establishes a framework for making decisions about the future growth of the community. And comprehensive plans have their roots in land use planning and development, and that's still the core of a comprehensive plan today, and that includes our plan. So while it does have lots of ramifications for other components of a community, and all those are addressed in the plan, just keep in mind that first and foremost, this is about land use and development, and that's why it resides in the planning office. And that's why I was responsible for hiring the consultant to get the plan in place. As far as why do we need a comprehensive plan, you've all heard the phrase failing to plan is planning to fail. I liken it to going on a road trip and not having a map or GPS. You're going to have a hard time getting to where you want to go if you don't have a plan for it. So comprehensive planning, as the name suggests, is kind of looking at several different things. So that requires you to really step back and look at the big picture. We get caught up in the day-to-day administration of the city, and even at the council level, you're very busy passing bills and talking about a policy for this or a program for that. The comprehensive planning process allows you to just kind of hit pause on that and really kind of step back and just kind of look at the community and say, where are we at as a community? What are we like right now? And that's part of why we hired the consultant to help us really understand who we are at this point in time, and then get input as far as what we want to be in the future. So another important purpose for a comprehensive plan is that it serves as a legitimate basis for regulatory actions and investment decisions. So this is actually something you can tie back when you're doing capital improvements programming, or you're looking at certain policies, code amendments, or new ordinances that affect things like land use and development. It's very important to be able to tie that back to a master plan document. So that's one of the another one of the important purposes of this particular plan. The plan affects several different areas. We've already talked about, land use development. Of course, zoning is a tool used to implement a comprehensive plan. So that's one of the regulatory tools that we have. I already mentioned that it is useful in capital improvements programming. Also useful, of course, for economic development because that can help potential businesses understand what we want to be, what we're looking for in terms of our business community, and where we would like to have certain types of businesses in the city. It also looks at, of course, various community services, and then quality of life issues, things like parks and recreation, restaurants, entertainment, festivals, things like that. So the new plan is called Cape Vision 2040. It replaces the plan that was adopted in 2008. That was, I think, just called the City Cape Girardeau Comprehensive Plan. And comprehensive plans typically have about a 20-year horizon. So it's kind of understood that you kind of revisit it, reevaluate it at the midpoint. So really about 10 years into the plan is when you need to look at it to see if it's still on course and if it needs to be updated. So that's what we did. The previous plan was adopted in 2008, and around 2016, 17 is when we started looking at the plan that we had and to see if it was something that we needed to update. And we decided that it did need to be updated. There have been a lot of changes since that plan was adopted, including things like getting a casino and the new business park and things like that. So we felt that it was time to go ahead and get a consultant on board to do an update to the plan. So we went through the RFQ process and selected the team of Tesk Associates and Orion Planning and Design. And when we first hired them, our expectation was that this would be an update to the previous plan. So it'd be something that would build on that document, wasn't necessarily an entirely new plan. But as we got into the process, the consultant team really felt it would be best to give us an entirely new plan. So we were very excited about that. The group that I guess represented the city and the community as far as overseeing this was the Comprehensive Plan Oversight Committee. That's an ad hoc committee at the city. Of course, they were used last time when the previous comprehensive plan was in process. But that is the group that was really responsible for overseeing the development of the comprehensive plan. So we got the consultant on board, got them with the committee. They started off by doing a kickoff meeting with the committee, and then they did a number of stakeholder interviews. We had a large group, I think roughly 30 to 40 stakeholders in the community, ranging from various types of businesses to the education system to community organizations. So we caught a pretty good cross section of stakeholders in the community, key figures. And so the consultant was able to interview those stakeholders one-on-one to really understand the role they play in the community, what's important to them, and what they would like to see in the years to come and what they would like to see incorporated into the plan. So that served as the basis for the public engagement. That is where it started. And then from that, we scheduled some public engagement meetings. The first one was Cape Visioning Workshop that was held on November 7th, 2017. And that meeting was held at the middle school, I believe. And that one was really just to kind of get people's big ideas for Cape. You know, what do you want to see about Cape? What about Cape is missing? What would you like to see in the years to come? And so it was really just kind of a big idea gathering session. And they also had certain topics that they did want to get some feedback on. So that was more of a general type public meeting. And then the next day, or I guess a couple days later, at Spaghetti Day, the Parks and Rec Foundation Spaghetti Day, they actually had a booth there. They called it the Idea Booth. And so there was a board there where people could write in, again, their big ideas for Cape. And then, took that information and prepared for the next workshop, which was held in January 25th of 2018. We called it Cape to the Future. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but that was the second and final workshop that we held for the plan. In addition to the in-person meetings, we had community engagement in the forms of a project website, capevision2040.com, and that's where people were able to really see the progress of the plan, of course, learn about it, and sign up for updates, email notifications as new information, content was posted to the website. The consultant also issued some quick polls, some sets of polls that were sent out through social media, also available on the website, where they just took different topics and polled people about, what things they thought were important, or asked them to rate things or rank things. And so that was very useful and got us quite a bit of input from the public in terms of what's really important to our citizens. We also, of course, had social media, and the Public Information Office was very helpful in helping to get that portion of the community engagement process underway. And then, of course, once the document was ready, just recently at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, we had a public hearing. So that kind of represents all the different ways that we reached out to the community to make sure that we had input that was representative of our citizens and our businesses and our community organizations, and wasn't just something that city officials provided input for. So I mentioned the Cape to the Future workshop that was held in January 2018. There were several different exercises that the consultant led the participants through. One of the most important ones was to decide on a direction for the comprehensive plan, the document that they were going to write. So they presented the participants with three different, what they call policy approaches, I guess, to growth in a community. So the first one was the conventional model, which is what we've been doing for the past umpteenth years. Essentially, that's expansion outward. So the focus of policy and investments have been to kind of extend the city, grow it outward. In this case, more to the northwest and the west and the southwest. And so the focus of it, the arrows there, you can see kind of represent the focus of the city. That development was shifting out to the fringe of the city limits. The second approach that they presented is called retrofit and redevelopment, and that's represented by B. And so the basis for that is to really, instead of focus outward and the fringe of the city boundary, really focus on taking properties we already have in the city limits and finding ways to make them better. So we've got existing developments. Some of them could be retrofitted and upgraded. And then we have areas that just need redevelopment. We've got infill as well. So that policy really focuses on what we have right now. And then the third one was the strategic connections, represented by C. And that one was supposed to kind of be a hybrid of the two, but it really focuses more on the connections between key nodes in the city, key activity areas and activity centers, and really focuses on kind of the corridors between them in terms of their function and in terms of their aesthetics. So the result of that discussion with the participants was that they heavily favored option B. although they felt, C would also be appropriate. But a majority of the participants felt that option B, retrofit and redevelopment, was the direction to go. And so that is what the consultant used as the basis for writing the plan. This is just the table of contents of the plan. So this represents, obviously several different components of the community, and a traditional comprehensive plan has an explicit section of goals, followed by objectives, followed by the next goal, followed by the objectives for that goal, etc. And this plan really didn't do that. That was something that was kind of, I guess, just based on the consultant's way of doing their work. But we chose to have the goals be represented by the chapters in the plan itself. So number 3 through 8 there represent essentially the goals of the comprehensive plan. And then at the end of each of those chapters is a set of action items, which are the objectives that can be used to help achieve those goals. So what I'll quickly do is just kind of show you the summary action item tables for each of those sections. And then we can highlight some of those. And then if you want to talk about them, we can do that. The first one is economic prosperity. So you can see there are 6 different action items there. Some of them are fairly specific. For example, the West Park Mall, we all know that that mall appears to be dying a slow death, even though it still looks fairly good. But it continues to lose tenants. And I don't think we've ever had a really good discussion with them about the future of that property and where it's headed. But there's certainly some interest in seeing what we can do to keep that mall from going under in the future. The one at the top there is much more broad, and that's really just a comprehensive economic development plan. So that's something the Chamber of Commerce and the Magnet would play a key role in. I do want to point out that this is just the summary. So these are actually at the end of the plan in the appendix, whereas the tables that are at the end of the specific chapters have more columns. They identify who the lead organization or group would be, so who would have a lead role, who would have a support role, looks at kind of relative cost and also time frame. And then you can see there the priorities. So not all that information is shown in these summary tables, but I did want to point out that we do identify, who would take the lead on that, kind of what would be involved in terms of cost and time. So, but we did also rate them in priority. So that kind of gives you an idea of how important it was based on the input we received from the public engagement process. All this is derived from that input. Social and culture vibrancy. That's obviously a very broad category that includes everything from education, parks and recreation, historic preservation, entertainment, dining, the arts. All that is encompassed within this particular category. So you see we've got 10 action items there. Some of them focus on things like after school cultural enrichment program, the downtown strategic plan. Old Town Cape or downtown area has its own plan, and so that was updated recently, and that has some new goals and objectives there that need to be implemented. Reusing historic buildings, that supports the retrofit and redevelopment approach that the participants in the Cape to the Future workshop identified. And then you'll see here several mentions of our special tax projects like PRS2, TTF, those are mentioned in here as well. Of course, we want to implement those programs the best as we can and maximize our efficiency on those in terms of spending the tax dollars. And then you'll see other things like outdoor festivals, events, expanding choices for dining. A lot of the input we received from the public community engagement process did focus on just having more options for people. Of course, this is all pre-COVID, so it doesn't take into account the fact that a lot of restaurants don't have their dining rooms open now. Some people aren't comfortable dining out or going to large gatherings right now. In fact, pretty much all large gatherings have been canceled. So, depending on how long the pandemic goes, we may need to reevaluate evaluate the plan and the action items sooner than the typical 10-year window. But for now, this is what our citizens had indicated they really would like to see more of in the city. The next section was quality housing mix. We have 6 action items there. A lot of these focus on just, of course, enforcement of property maintenance codes, abating nuisances, and providing assistance to low-income and elderly homeowners. The city, has for several years participated in a home repair program that has served us well and has really been beneficial to the community. A lot of those programs are starting to dry up. The funds aren't as, there aren't as many funds available as there used to be. So, but we still want to do what we can to really assist some of these low-income and elderly homeowners who may not have the ability to make repairs to their property. So, and the other thing I want to point out is, of course, just expanding choices for housing. So we want to make sure that we're able to meet a range of housing needs for our residents. So that's something we need to continuously look at when we do projects downtown like the TIF, where there's rehab of historic buildings, commercial on the ground floor, apartments above, that helps further that particular action item because it is expanding our choices. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. We need to keep working to providing more options for housing in our community. The next chapter is sustainable infrastructure. We've got several here. Of course, a lot of those are tied to our public works department. Again, you see mentioned there of PRS2, Parks, Recreation, Stormwater, Capital Improvement, Sales Tax. We have a water system master plan and a sewer system master plan. So we have some other plans that need to be updated. And so they are actually, mentioned and addressed in this particular plan. But those are all critical to making sure we have an infrastructure that serves us well now and in the future, and that we have funding to cover what it takes to maintain those systems at an acceptable level. That's actually called an asset management plan. And so I think there are some aspects of an asset management plan that we do have in place now, but there's opportunities for more. The next chapter was enhanced transportation and mobility. So again, you see our special tax programs, TTF5. At the time, TTF6, was still in the works. It hadn't passed yet. So we used the action item for TTF to talk about planning for TTF6. Now it would be implementing TTF6. Transportation is very important. We did hear a lot about that from the people that participated in the community engagement process. A lot of requests for more bike facilities, bike lanes, expansion of trails, connecting trails to other trails, and of course, just maintaining our streets and really taking care of what we have. Of course, the airport is a major component of our transportation system, and so we want to support that as well. We do have the capital improvement sales tax funding available for that, but these are all different components of our transportation system that we want to make sure we are supporting for the future. This also mentions SEMPO, of course, our Regional Transportation Planning Agency, and MoDOT. Those are both partners in really achieving our transportation goals. And I just wanted to point out supporting emerging technologies in transportation, things like driverless vehicles, connected autonomous, things like that. Electric vehicles. Those are things we need to be staying on top of as far as these trends and being prepared for those as well. And then the final action item table is for harmonious land use. That chapter really did an assessment of our existing land uses in the community. It prepared what's called basically an existing land use map. And then it used that to generate a new set of recommended land uses and what we call the future land use map. So that's an important part of the plan is that it takes all the properties in the city and recommends a particular land use category for them. And that can serve as a basis and a resource for both zoning property when it comes into the city limits, when it's annexed, and also rezoning existing property. So this section actually includes a table that shows, for every particular land use category that's shown on the future land use map. It gives some options for particular zoning districts that would be appropriate for that land use category. So in the action item table, again, you'll see a lot of this ties back to that retrofit and redevelopment theme of the plan. Things like encouraging rehabilitation, reuse of existing building inventory. Sometimes that requires incentives, as you know. We've got the TIF right now that's pretty active, and so that is really facilitating a lot of redevelopment where we probably wouldn't see it. So it's important to provide those incentives to help encourage. And then, of course, as you know, we've been looking at our codes, the zoning and development codes in particular. We've been presenting you with several amendments and tweaks to those codes over the past few years to really make sure that they are conducive to retrofit and redevelopment our community, that in addition to financial incentives, we've got other types of regulatory incentives, or at least removing obstacles to allowing developers to acquire and redevelop property in a manner that is beneficial to both them and the community. One of the action items is about annexing. Annexation is very important. It helps us gain control over the development. It helps avoid substandard development on a periphery. We've had a little bit of history with that, where we've had developers that didn't want to be in the city limits. They do a substandard development, and then the well fails or the septic system starts to fail, and then they want to get on city water and sewer, and it gets more complicated at that point. So we really wanted to try to facilitate annexing and really making our city boundary more regular and cohesive. So that's one thing that was also included in this action item table. Then, of course, encouraging mixed-use development. There's a whole discussion in that particular chapter about what's called the suburban mixed-use concept. So we've got mixed-use downtown. How could you apply some of those principles to the more suburban areas of the city and introduce something that we don't have right now? Then the last one is preparing a corridor enhancement plan for Midtown. That area is in need of probably its own specialized plan at some point to address, the transportation, the large developments there. We're seeing a lot of redevelopment already taking place, but there needs to be a plan that's really specific to that area at some point. And then this, if you haven't seen it, this is the future land use map. So again, when I submit a staff report for rezoning or zoning of annexed property, I always mention what this particular map shows as the future land use for that particular property. It doesn't always necessarily align. The plan we had previously, the future land use map, was quite off from a lot of the requests we were getting from property owners, and even internally, we weren't sure where some of these recommendations came from. But the new map should align pretty well with what we're going to see in the future in terms of rezoning requests. We're already seeing that now. And with that, we'll turn it back to Molly, and if we have any discussion or questions, be happy to stay on for that.
Thank you.
Brian, I've got one question. Back on sustainable infrastructure, you've got continue to upgrade the LED street lighting throughout the city was a low priority, and I would disagree with that. I would put it at medium. I think that's something that we strive to do for two reasons. One, better lighting and more security. And two, it's a lot more efficient.
Mayor, to your point, I think it was made a low priority primarily because the city has upgraded the majority, if not all of our lights to LEDs, or we have a plan to do that. So that's already in progress. And I believe Ameren is systematically doing the same thing. So it's something that's already in the works. We agree. It makes a lot of sense. But we already have a plan in place to accomplish that. And that's why I believe it was assigned a lower priority.
Okay. It just doesn't look good to have something in there low priority in my mind.
You'll notice we have a lot of things in there that have that high priority. And I know we had a conversation. We can't make everything a high priority. We do, otherwise there's no point of assigning, we can't make everything the highest priority. So we did have that conversation.
It's a relative priority. So, you compare LED street lighting to, our infiltration and inflow program, that's important as well. And then we've really been working over the years to try to separate our sewers, our storm and sanitary sewers, and really try to clean up that whole system. So that was something that, the folks that were involved in the action items really felt that was much higher priority than replacing the street lighting, even though it is important.
Understand.
So Ryan gave a very good overview of the plan, how we got to this point. I do think that the consultants that we retained for this project did a phenomenal job with the public engagement piece. I thought that was fantastic. We had some really great public meetings and got a lot of great input, especially from Nicolette's family on that Chuck E. Cheese zoo. And maybe that's what we'll put in Red Star, Dan. Anyway, a lot of information, and I don't expect you all to have read the entire plan at this point or have specific ideas on what you would like to be the highest priority, but we do want to familiarize you with it because, again, like Ryan said, this is a foundational document. We want it to be utilized. We don't want it to sit on the shelf. So please, when you have some time, take a look at it. Let us know if you have questions. If there's something that you would like us to focus on, please let us know. And again, we'd be happy to answer any questions that you have at this point in time regarding any of it.
It's only 158 pages long.
But who's counting?
I have a question, totally random, since we're looking at it right now. Section 3.04 on economic prosperity. It's regarding the mall, because everybody's always kind of wondering about the mall, talking about the mall. I mean, it's a privately owned deal. What conversations have taken place, or what can in the future take place to in any of that? I mean, how does the city approach that?
Yeah, we have had conversations with mall management in the past few years with the chamber. We've sat down with the management. The company that holds the mall hasn't been incredibly interested in engaging in a lot of that conversation. And it's kind of ebbed and flowed over the years. Sometimes we have more interest than others in ways that we can improve the mall's attractiveness to new tenants. But I think it goes beyond that. I think we need to start talking about what the future holds for the mall.
Mm-hmm.
Malls are not doing well across the country, and a lot of them are turning to alternative land use models to be successful. So some of them are including, housing for seniors or young people or mixed use housing. And some people are including community colleges. Some places are including medical offices. So as a way to utilize all of that square footage that's available, but also then you have a constant stream of people that can utilize the shops that are still there. So those are some of the conversations we would like to have. And I think we will continue to have those conversations. It will take a willing property owner to do anything, but we've been trying to set that stage moving forward. And so we'll continue to have those conversations, and it might come down to providing a mechanism like we've seen in other locations, like a community improvement district or a TDD or a TIF or something like that to help with those redevelopment efforts.
Yeah.
I do think we have some tools at our disposal. We'll continue to have those conversations and just make sure that doesn't go by the wayside.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting, it's not just the mall, it's the entire, it's a huge piece of property right in the center of town, and often empty, so great. No, that's great. Thank you.
Here's my question, if you guys don't mind me jumping in. To me, economic vitality and economic prosperity is one of the essentials for the next 20 years of the city of Cape Girardeau. Where do we start? how do we jump in? Do we form some sort of a group? What do we do? Like now we've set our goals for the next 20 years. What's the first step towards meeting those goals?
So I think that there's several different ways to approach that because we have different goals within that overall economic prosperity umbrella. For example, we have all of the retail space that's underutilized with the evolution of internet sales and whatnot. How are we going to address that moving forward? Can we repurpose or readapt that space moving forward? So I think that's one entity. We have other sectors of the economy that we'd like to grow, whether that's the tech sector or the entrepreneurial sector. And I think that requires a separate effort. So I think that we need to continue to work with the Chamber and Magnet on developing strategies to tackle each of those bigger segments of the economy and develop strategies to help us accomplish those goals. But it's going to take time. It's not something that happens overnight. It's going to be something that we're going to have to continue to work at.
Do we have the infrastructure, like human capital wise infrastructure, to put together those types of things? Because I know whenever it comes to Magnet, there's a lot of members of the board, but there's really only a few people that actually do the action. And so I'm just trying to think of how do we make sure this actually happens?
You're right, Dan. The human capital is very limited for a lot of these efforts, so it's going to require partnerships. And that seems to be a successful way to accomplish these things in the past, in the present, in the future. So I think we need to identify those partnerships and how we can leverage each other's capabilities to make progress moving forward. But yeah, there's not enough people to do it. The city can't do it by ourselves. Magnet can't do it by themselves. We're going to all have to work together to make it happen.
Yeah. Okay.
Dan,
Well-
just an example, Magnet works with the Missouri Department of Economic Development and Rob Dixon at the state level on a constant basis, looking for any of those things that come into the state and whether we can make them fit in Southeast Missouri.
Well, sure.
So there's lots of things that are going on.
Well, I
Yeah.
just know that Magnet has 2 employees, John and Janice, I believe. And
Right.
it's a lot of heavy lifting.
That's why they deal with people like Rob Dixon and other places and other people around the country and dealing with trying to get, manufacturing industry. And at the same time, then you've got the chambers working on that and working on helping your existing businesses. So there's lots of things going on that it does take more than 2 people.
I just want to make sure we have the framework set up for success in this category, because this is the future category. A lot, cultural and everything else goes along with it as well. But as long as we've got solid jobs, attention and retraction of talent, this is the core of the next 20 years. And I just want to make sure that we go into it knowing that it's really going to take some legwork to get to some of these goals and to really make them actionable. Just because I want to see this all happen. And it's one of those things that we just currently don't have the underpinnings for it.
No, I and I've been fortunate enough the last couple of years to see more of the inner workings with Magnet. And, at any one given time, there could be 25 projects that are being worked on that amount to hundreds, if not almost thousands of jobs. And so, we have some, you're talking about underpinning. And if we dig into some of our issues as a community, our seismic issue is a problem for attraction. I hate to say it, but right to work is another huge thing. Outside competitive, whenever in our area, when you look at Tennessee and Arkansas, and it can be difficult to compete with. I have a lot of faith. I've been able to see the last couple of years that there's a lot that goes on, and we say Magnet's got 2 employees, but with our agreement with them, I can assure you there's a lot more than 2 people working on in that group over there that's working on helping develop those things and work that out.
But we
Also the strategic partners with the university and the Career and Technology Center, Cape College. There's a bunch of moving parts in there that are much more than just Poor
Well,
Janice.
there's other things going on. One big thing that Earl Norman has been championing for years is the East-West corridor, the I-66 corridor. If P&G were looking to come here today, they'd never pick us because that corridor doesn't exist. And they need that corridor for transportation. But there's lots of things going on a constant basis that take years to get done sometimes.
Well, and that's one of the other things that it concerns me is, with 67 taking people from St. Louis down through Poplar Bluff into Dallas and into Arkansas.
That has been a renewed discussion because of that.
And in 57 going from Illinois through Sykeston and over, over to Poplar Bluff as well. I just want to make sure that we retain our spot as a regional hub.
Right.
Molly, you mentioned, internet sales and the tech sector. Those are two things that we've talked about a lot. I mean, the whole internet situation, pretty much we talk about it almost every time we get together. Does that deserve, its own action item here, or does that fall under, Ryan, in your estimation, does that fall under 3.01 or especially the internet part of it and how we deal with that?
Well, the plan does talk about that condition we're in, of course, but it really doesn't have a solution. It really talks about the fact that needs to be a top priority, as we know. That action item 3.01, that was something that John Maynard really pushed, and that economic development plan, I don't know if that's really a single document. It sounded like Molly was talking about maybe a couple different initiatives, but really, all that really kind of folds into that overall umbrella of something that's basically like a comprehensive plan, but just focuses on our economy. And that is certainly a very important part of that discussion.
Okay.
Great job, Ryan.
Yes.
Thank you.
A lot of work, Ryan. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
So just keep in mind, any future questions or anything about the comprehensive plan, please don't hesitate to reach out to Ryan or myself, and we'd be happy to answer any questions or explain the thought behind any of the content of the plan moving forward. So with that, we will move on to our next topic on the agenda, which is reinventing government. And I know that over the past several months, you've heard us talk a lot about reinventing government in conjunction with our budget discussions and our budget woes, but what does that mean exactly? And if you'll indulge me for a second, I want to try to provide an analogy that might make it more relatable. So I want you to imagine it's this weekend and you're planning a big meal for all your family and friends. And you're really excited because you're going to make your signature dish, whether that's French toast or a Sunday roast, or maybe Robbie's practicing for barbecue fests and he's getting ready to put his magic rub on that barbecue. And now I'm making myself hungry. But anyways, you get started with your cooking and you're elbow deep and you're mixing and you're stirring and you're tasting it to make sure that everything's just right. When all of a sudden you realize you're out of a key ingredient and you start to panic and you start to think, what am I going to do? Is there something I can substitute for this ingredient? If I leave it out, is anybody going to notice? Is it going to change the outcome so much that people aren't going to like it? So is it so fundamental to the dish that you just can't finish and you throw it out and you go out to eat, right? So we've all probably been in that situation. I know I have on more than one occasion. And reinventing government is very similar to that scenario. So just bear with me here. But necessity really is the mother of invention. And I know that when I've been in that situation in the kitchen before, sometimes you can find a creative way to make it all come together after the fact. And, that's really what reinventing government's all about. We have a problem, we need a creative way to solve it. So we have a local government recipe that includes revenue and expenses. It includes staffing resources, operations and service levels. It's got all these different ingredients. And we've spent the last year tinkering with our recipe to determine if we can change up the ingredients and produce an outcome that everyone's going to love. Okay. So the budget team was formed in the summer of 2019, about a year ago, and we met for several months. And that team was asked to take that local government recipe and pick it apart. What ingredients can we live without? Is there something that we're doing that we can stop doing that's not going to change the outcome of our level of service? Is there something that we're doing that doesn't really add to the value of our community or our organization that we can stop doing? Are there redundant ingredients? Can we combine them or eliminate one and still provide the same level of service or better? So we've spent months doing that and tinkering and picking things apart and asking some hard questions. And we've started to make some of those changes. You've seen some of those come before you, for example, like the false alarm fees that we're implementing. And a lot of changes have been happening behind the scenes. We've made changes at the airport to be more efficient by changing our hours of operation and increasing our fuel prices and tinkering with those ingredients so that we're more efficient, we're still providing an acceptable or better level of service. So some of you may recall, as we went through that process with the budget team, we kept the council apprised of some of our recommendations and things moving forward. And one of our recommendations was to look at the development services fee schedule, because there are certain things that we are subsidizing in development services. And we thought it made sense to let's overhaul the fee schedule so that development's paying for itself. And the response that we got from council at the time was, hey, that's great, but development services is one of those areas where we hear a lot of complaints. Plan review takes too long, it's too hard to get a permit. I can't get an inspection when I need an inspection, those types of things. So the directive that council gave us at the time was make development services better. And today's focus of reinventing government is focused on that development services transformation. So when council asked us to find a way to make development services better, we embarked on a transformation. And we brought Anna Kangas back, yay, from Colorado to be our transformation manager and our city hall project manager. And those two things, first of all, it's a ton of work, but it really does go hand in hand. One, Anna has just dug in on the transformation, and she's going to talk to you a little bit today about how she's started that process of tinkering with our ingredients. And then she's also going to give you a little bit of overview about how the City Hall project has afforded some additional opportunities. So it's not that common when you're doing something like this, where you also have the ability to change your physical space. And so we have that advantage right now too. So not only can we look at changing roles and responsibilities and positions and who does what, but we also have the ability with the City Hall project to look at, well, maybe if we sit these people together over here, we can gain some efficiencies and build some redundancy into our service. So that has been a real advantage to this transformation process. The other thing that you'll hear from Anna is a little bit of the ripple effect that's happening. So as we start to dive into the development services transformation, it starts to have ripple effects into other departments. And so we're going to start to see some changes there too. And that's going to set the stage for future transformation in other departments moving forward. So I don't want to take all of Anna's material, but she's going to take it from now and tell you all about what she's been working on. We are trying to keep it more at a high level because we're still working through a lot of those positions and roles and responsibilities, and we want to really have that more refined. So this will be more of a high level conversation, but with that, I'll turn it over to Anna, and then we'll take any of your questions afterwards.
Okay. Thank you, Molly. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Yes, no? Okay,
Yep.
good. Okay. So good afternoon, everybody. So I'm really excited to be back at the city. And like Molly said, today I'm going to focus more on what we're doing in development services, but there's also some changes that are happening in other city departments and divisions because of the changes that we're making here in development services. So the last couple months, I've taken the opportunity to look at a lot of our processes, and I'm looking at not just our internal staff, but also talking with some of our external stakeholders as well. And so the photos here are some tools that I've been using in the evaluation process. So photo on the left is an idea board that I have outside of my office, and I've invited staff to hang up inspirational images and quotes, but then they also stop by and write down processes that they want to get fixed because they're not working very well in the city. And sometimes those ideas, they just bypass that board outside and they come directly into my office to this other board that has all these sticky notes on it. And that's where I start tracking projects through the process of, okay, this is what needs to be done, and here's the research that we need to do on it. And then we start making process improvements and start tinkering with things, and then we finish. And so you see there's 4 categories, and everything's kind of spread out right now because there's a lot of different projects. But these projects, they range from small things like trying to make all of our faxes come to us through email instead of by paper, to large projects like the city hall and all of the little pieces that go into that, like selecting furniture and making sure that we have vending machines in the right places and all of that stuff. So there's a lot that goes into all of this. So my original intent whenever I came back to the city was focus this on development services, but it's really kind of, all of these changes, they're kind of impacting a lot of different departments. And, you know, especially once I started managing the city hall project, I started seeing how the efficiencies in our work areas could also impact our processes. So our city as a whole is kind of like this tangled ball of thread that you see on this slide here. And when I started pulling it at one process, like, it started impacting processes in other departments. So directly, customer service and nuisance abatement are going to be impacted by some of the things that we're working on. So customer service, as you know, in the new city hall, they will not be in the new city hall. And we are moving them out to Osage and Public Works, and we'll be working on design and construction of their new spaces soon, but then we hope to get them moved out next spring sometime. But along with that move, we're also reorganizing some of the functions that customer service does. So the business license, liquor license functions, special event permits, those will actually come into development services. And we're excited about that because it gives us the opportunity to be a one-stop shop for business owners, where they can come in and ask questions about their business license, but then also learn about any kind of building code issues that they may encounter, and making sure that the business that they want to have is acceptable in the zoning district where they're at. One of the other departments that is impacted by some of the changes we're making is nuisance abatement. So we have property maintenance inspectors here in development services, and a lot of times they go to the same properties that nuisance abatement officers go to. And so one of the things we're looking at is combining some nuisance folks into development services so that we can look at one property or multiple properties with just the one person instead of multiple staff. So it'll help us be a little bit more efficient. But then peripherally, some of these other departments are also impacted. So Public Works and Parks will obviously be impacted whenever customer service moves to their locations. And then some of the process changes that we're making in development services will also impact, you know, the fire department and finance. So I've been speaking not just with our internal stakeholders, but I've also had several phone conversations with developers and contractors and design professionals that do a lot of work in our area. And most of these have been by phone because of our current COVID situation. But we discussed several topics, the different initiatives that the city is taking to be more customer friendly, more development friendly. And then I also asked them where we can be better in our processes. And then I also asked them, what are you seeing in the other jurisdictions where you're working that you think we should be adopting here? And so those have been very beneficial conversations. some of the complaints that we've received, like Molly said, have been about our plan review times and also our inspection issues. And so some of the things that we are doing to address the plan review times right now are we're rearranging some of our plan review responsibilities to give our plan reviewer more time to focus just on the commercial plan review. And then we have other folks that are taking on the site plan and stormwater and some of the other permits. We are also, once we have those new staff trained on those different types of permits, we intend to start offering walk-in plan review services for some of the smaller things like fences and decks and pools. So that people can come in, we can review their plans on the spot, and they can walk out with a permit instead of waiting for a couple weeks. We're also looking to take more of our permits online so that we don't even have to have the customers come into City Hall. And we are working to restore our digital plan review services for our residential and commercial plan review, and I do expect that will be back up in the next couple months. And then the other thing that we're doing is issuing an RFP, a request for proposal, for plan review services to help us whenever we do have that backlog of commercial plan review. And so you may see that went up on our website today, and we'll be expecting responses for that for the next month or so. And then hopefully we'll have somebody on board that can help us whenever we have a lot of plan review in the queue. Another one of the complaints we get a lot about is that it's just difficult to get in contact with our inspectors, either before or during or after the inspections. And so we're working with staff right now to figure out how can we make that process better, all of those processes better. So some of these different tinkerings that we're doing, we'll be testing with smaller groups of stakeholders just to work out the kinks before they go live with our entire development community. And then, let's see. So we realize that this transformation is going to be very dynamic, that we may make a change and then live with it for a couple weeks or a couple months and then have to make another change to make the process even better. We are looking forward to the new building because it will offer us some more opportunities for collaboration. We will have better technology there. We'll have all of development services will be just in the Carnegie building, and so we'll be closer together, and we'll have a lot better layout capabilities. But also in the new facility, we'll have several areas that have open office spaces, and so we'll have that ability to be flexible if we need to rearrange people or functions. So I guess that was all that I really wanted to share with you today. Do you guys have any questions on this?
Anna, this is going to be just a really simple question for you whenever it comes to development services. When a developer approaches the city of Cape Girardeau, do we give them any sort of like a welcome packet or a guide or something that says this is what needs to happen and when?
Not currently that I know of. We do have a development guide on our website, but it is several years old, and we are aware that we need to update the information that is in that guide.
Okay. I was just thinking,
yeah.
Through some of my conversations with developers recently, the general overarching viewpoint that I feel like, and I'm sort of summing this up over several conversations, is that we're lacking a certain dynamism in the way that we're thinking about how the future of Cape Girardeau hits the development world. And so I think any way that we can do, and I think you're doing an excellent job already, just thinking critically about these and just really removing any sort of barriers there is going to be essential going forward. And so that's just through all the conversations I've had. It's just everybody wants us to just think a little bit more dynamically about how we can work with these developers and how we can almost curate or kind of handhold a project through to fruition.
One of the things that we're looking at, Dan, is a project concierge, and that person's sole responsibility will be a liaison between the developers and staff. So they will be the welcome wagon. They will be the ones to ensure that the developer is familiar with what is expected from them. That person will also be responsible for making sure that staff is meeting their deadlines and getting things through the process on time, so that we have someone kind of coordinating it from both sides and shepherding it through the process. Because
I love that idea.
it falls off on one side or the other, and And that's where the frustration lies. So we're hoping that this position will help facilitate that and make the process easier for everyone.
Right.
Mine's more of a statement. I probably, due to my career here, from a lot of developers and people building, and I appreciate Molly and Anna tackling this. Unfortunately, developers yell louder than any resident, really. So, I think reinventing and looking at everything, plan review is heartburn for people. We know that, so I welcome it. I can't wait to see what it's going to look like. And I think the first step for us when people were talking to some of us was, hey, Molly and staff had brought Anna back. They're really going to take a look at this. So it's good to see that you guys are listening and doing the things to reinvent and to change it. That's really all I got. I think plan review, I've heard that's probably the biggest thing. I think people want an answer. I've said this before. A quick no is way better than a drawn out maybe or a drawn out yes. And so I think being able to break down those barriers, and I think you guys sounds like you're on the right track.
Yeah,
I understand the difficulties of when you get plan review and you get those plans. A lot of it depends on who you get those plans from.
Yeah.
In a big way, because there are some architects and some engineering firms who do things very efficiently and do it correctly, and others try to cut corners, and that's where the inspection process comes in. But anything we can do to make that whole process a little more seamless, make it more efficient, and make it quicker, will keep everybody happy, not just the developers, but even the people that work for us.
Right. And that's another thing that we're looking at that we haven't completely wrapped our heads around yet, but we are looking at some sort of self-certification process. So those design professionals that do really good work and they submit plans that are complete and meet the code and require very little oversight from our part, we would like to implement some type of expedited review, or, maybe we don't know what it looks like yet, but if they're doing good work, then they should be rewarded with expedited review and quicker permit process.
Yes.
So in Anna's conversations with those in the development community, she's been kind of pitching that idea and getting some feedback from people about what do you think about that? We would still need to have some quality assurance checks to make sure that people are doing what they say they're doing. But I've had that in Arizona where we've had people certify, do building setback certifications, and they submit an affidavit that says that they've built that building where it's supposed to be, meeting the setback, and we take their word for it and they accept the liability and accountability for it. Now, if we find out after the fact that they're not meeting the setback and they're off by 2 feet, then guess what? You're going to have to go back and fix that. But I think those are some of the things that we're working on that will reward those people who do good work and provide them quicker, more seamless service moving forward.
In talking with developers, what do they think about that type of process?
Some of them have been very receptive to it because there are some designers in the city that submit very good plans the first time around. But there are some design professionals that are just concerned about the extra liabilities they might be taking on. So, we still have a lot of details to work out on that program as far as what types of plans we would allow to self-certify, and, what does that auditing process look like? How many times do they get to submit bad plans before they're not allowed to submit plans anymore for that type of project? So there's a lot of details still.
You don't submit bad plans, period.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Professionals don't do that.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of work to do still, but we wanted to give you kind of a high level overview of, what Anna's been working on and the direction that we're headed. We also have several retirements coming up in development services. And so that's a challenge for us because a lot of institutional knowledge is walking out the door in the coming months, but it's also a huge opportunity for us to reshape and assign responsibilities differently and more efficiently. And again, with the outcome of providing better service. So it's a lot to do and it's a lot to take on and it's really complicated and fluid, but Anna's doing a phenomenal job. And I think when we get through it, it's going to be a better process for the development community and it's going to be better for staff. And hopefully you all get a lot less phone calls.
Hey, if there's anybody out there that can do it, it's Anna. So we got a lot of trust in you, Anna.
Thanks, Dan.
Are there any
Well,
other questions about the process or anything moving forward?
I think it's a great process, and I think the sooner we get to be more efficient and the better. So that's a great. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, I would just add, as someone who also hears a lot of concerns and doesn't, I'm not in the building world and all that. When it all gets settled, a nice flow chart would be helpful for me and that I can give to developers and builders and say, here. No, I mean, it sounds like it's going to be great, but yeah, just when we have our own questions to us or to you all, being able to navigate that ourselves is going to be helpful too. So
Absolutely.
That's actually an idea that we've talked about is some kind of flow chart on our website that would say, does your project include this? Well, then you need to have this permit. And does it include this? Well, then you need this review. But we haven't fully developed that yet either. But
and who the person would be to, so.
Yeah, I think, and I've said this before, and I'll just offer it up again, that in your efforts, anything that you can do to eliminate the subjectivity or the perceived subjectivity of it. Like Bob, the mayor said earlier, was it matters who submits the plans. What I hear from developers is it shouldn't matter who reviews it or who inspects it. It should be consistent across the board. So the way, if we can eliminate that subjectivity or that perceived subjectivity or any preferential treatment or anything, that would be something I'd put high on the priority list. I just want to move us in this direction for Cape. It's becoming a negative as far as from the development standpoint. We all want to see development in the city, and we don't want to do anything that would be prohibitive to that development and ensure that we get the quality that we want, but not getting that reputation for being prohibitive to development.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well,
Agreed.
we'll keep you apprised throughout the process. Like we said, lots of moving parts and pieces, but we will provide you updates along the way. And as Anna said, even when we implement something, we're going to try it out. And if inevitably, we're probably going to have to make some changes over time, but we will certainly keep you apprised and get that flow chart for you, Stacy.
Thank you. I need visual aids on everything.
I would say I'm a huge advocate of the certification and the fast lane process. Currently what happens because of our process is we get somebody who submits bad plans and it takes days to review that the next plans behind them are great plans, and they wait those days for the person that is given us bad plans. And if people can't take responsibility through certification, then do we really want them doing business in our city anyway? Now, then the other side of that is that people are going to come to you and say, well, they just want us to use expensive engineers and they, so we're going to have, once we streamline things and we're really rewarding the people that are doing the best work, then there's going to be the backside of that is going to be people are coming to you and saying, this isn't fair. And so it's our job to make sure that you understand why it's fair, but it's going to be, the old thing of, we treat everybody the same, so that's treating everybody fairly. To do this, we can't treat everybody exactly the same. The people that are professional and doing it well are going to have a fast lane. And the people that are not going to have a fast lane. And that's fair, but it's not the same. And so just as we try to work that out, because it's a hard thing to do. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted you all to hear this, is because the people that aren't in the fast lane are going to be coming to you and saying you're playing favorites.
Huh. Yes.
Oh, another
Yes,
set
they
of
are.
complaints.
If all the rules are laid out and
Exactly what I was gonna say.
if the rules are laid out, they all can adhere to the rules. And if they're not in the fast lane, they need to change their approach.
And it should just be, and it should be clear in what they need to do to get in that fast lane.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean,
and then
if it's
not
laid
gonna
out,
be-
they can adhere just like anybody else.
Yeah, it's an
And if you can
educational process.
streamline it. If you can streamline it that way, then I think, Anna and this group has done everything they can. Adhere, and it goes this fast. Don't, and it's going to be as bad as it ever was.
That's where Stacy's flow chart comes into play here.
Yeah.
Well,
No, I like it. I mean, listen, let's be honest. A lot of them have complained and complained and complained. And if we can find a solution, then what else? I mean, they've got a solution there. They can adhere to it, or their complaints can fall on deaf ears.
We've all been in the licensing office where the person in front of us doesn't have all their stuff. And then the line over here, the people all have their stuff, and 6 people go through while the person that doesn't have their stuff is digging through it. And, you're chewing your lip off. Anyway, it's the same thing.
Other than the fact that there's multiple people at the same time. So you're not all forced to be behind the same person.
Right. Right. And that's the thing, though. But if you get behind them, then, when you're in line, you don't know how people are. That's what's happening to our good developers now, is they're in line behind somebody that's costing a tremendous amount of time. And they're waiting all the time.
That's a great point. How much currently is being bogged down by having to have 4, they're on the 4th time. What do you guys call that, Anna? I forgot.
The 4th round of review comments.
Yeah, comments. That's right. We're on our 4th round of comments.
What that is really called is city design, because we're designing the project.
Right.
The obvious problem I could see with that is that you're never going to know always with 100% certainty what's coming in, right? I mean, you could conceivably have a proposal or a plan come in from somebody who's on the good list, which then has problems, or a project come in from somebody who historically perhaps has had a number of problems, but doesn't this time. And so how do we make sure that things are handled fairly? Because I think just listening to the comments, I think there's going to be a thin line between categorizing and putting people into groups forever. I can see how that would be a concern.
And
Well,
that's how we have to-
Wouldn't a lot of it depend on the project, though, what it is and what they're doing?
We'll have to have criteria
Yeah.
that will establish whether you're on the good list or the not so good list, and what your review time will be. And as Robbie said, that'll be crystal clear. It'll be all laid out. And Stacy, you're right. Somebody might have a bad submittal, and then maybe they get put on the not so good list. for a period of, 2 months or something like that. That's how it has to be figured out, but it will be laid out. We will have a process and there'll have to be criteria. And the ones that, are local folks, we know pretty much who does business here. And so that I think will sort itself out fairly quickly. The ones that will be more difficult is our out of town submittals, so a lot of times when we have corporations come in, whether it's Chili's or it's Starbucks or whomever, they have a corporate architect. And so where do they fit in? They haven't done business with us before. So do we give them a chance and let them go on the fast track? Or that's what we have to sort out. Those are the ones that we're not clear yet, how we would certify them without having done business with them previously.
Well, and if everything is clear and on the website and all the expectations are set out there, then everybody's got a fair chance. And so even if you're a small developer who's just now raising funds to do your first project, if you're an out-of-town developer, as long as it's all out there, everybody's got a fair shot at getting their processes through in the most timely manner.
Well, and in no system will it be you're in this, you can go fast lane or you can't go fast lane, and you're in there forever. There'll be things you can do to earn your way in, and there's things you can do to earn your way out. And so that's part of that criteria. But it's a difficult thing, and I know Anna and Molly are looking at that, but I really think there's also on the other side of that is a tremendous opportunity to really significantly speed things up and still get great quality. So good luck.
Yeah. Well, and I really appreciate hearing, that, one project or one builder can gum up the whole system for everybody else. I mean, that's frustrating for many, many people, even buyers who have no idea what's going on, but they're just wondering why their thing is, taking forever. So I appreciate that. And I'm glad to hear I know we're probably jumping the gun a lot on all this, Molly. So anyway, as to Dan and Robbie's points, just the more that's upfront and clear, obviously the better.
And I think for the most part,
if you tie it together back to that Cossier, who then can work with those developers and say, hey, you're in the slow lane. Here's the things you need to do to get in the fast lane.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that's, all these things fit together. That's the great thing that Anna pointed out.
Right.
And guys, from what I've seen and heard, the guys that are out here developing and building subdivisions, you know what, they lay it out to them and they want to do it. They want to be as quick as possible.
Sure.
They're
want to be too quick.
They're like, bring it on. Tell us what we've got to do to get in the fast lane.
And that's exactly what I said. That if they know it and it's laid out, they will go. Yeah. They will adhere to it and go. Like what throws them off is when they're throwing a curveball of something unexpected and it's perceived as subjectivity or whatever it may be.
Yeah. So good stuff, guys.
I think it's a great start to redevelop, reinvent our developmental services and our whole city government, and it's greatly appreciated.
Well, thanks.
Thank you for coming back from Colorado. I don't know how we did that, but thank you.
Thanks, Robbie.
Well, that completes our discussion topics. We do, of course, have on the agenda other items, other issues that you'd like to talk about, and I think Scott was going to lead this discussion.
Yes, and thank you, Anna and Molly. A wonderful discussion. They've worked so hard to get to where they are, and these are all complicated things, and it's a balance between customer service and yet, the last thing we want is to end up with a bunch of subdivisions that have a bunch of improvements in it that we have to take care of that all fall apart in 10 years. So we've got to have that balance of both. And so they're doing a great job of doing that. I just had a couple of things I wanted to point out. And then after that, certainly open it up to any kind of council questions that you might have. First all, we are starting to relook at disconnects, starting to re-implement that. I put it on hold when we kind of had the resurgence of the virus, and but done some checking. Jackson has re-implemented their disconnects. Perryville has. Ameren UE has put theirs back in place. So we're looking to re-implement in the next few weeks. Don't know exactly when, but we will let you know. But I want to give you a heads up that is something that is coming and on the way. Just have a few items for Monday night. Just if you haven't had a chance to look at that agenda yet. One of them is we are adding to the agenda that we put out for packets for the people that come. We're adding some verbiage in there that says when people appear, whether it be on the agenda or things not on the agenda, that they're given 5 minutes, and all that verbiage is already on there. But we're adding a phrase that just says, council will not engage or discuss with you or answer questions from you during your time. That during the time of appearances, once the time of appearances is over, then if council wants to discuss, the council can do that now. So it sets the expectation that that's the way we're going to be doing those appearances. And Bob, I think, said he's going to, for the first few times anyway, going to announce to make sure people know that's what the expectation is, so that they don't start asking questions and trying to engage. So that's a change that we made. Just wanted to make you aware of that. Then just there's 2 items on there that you may be surprised to see. One of them is helmet law. The state passed a new helmet law, and within that helmet law, it says that no subdivision or local jurisdiction can pass something more restrictive than this new state law, which allows, I believe, people over a certain age to not wear a helmet. So if you remember when the college student was on the scooter and was hit and killed, did not have a helmet on, we passed a requirement to require that helmet. So we'll have to remove that, because that is a more restrictive than the state. So that's one ordinance on there. Another one, the same, almost the exact same reasoning, but a different subject matter, is the sale of pseudoephedrine, which we passed a few years ago, regarding the purchase of pseudoephedrine requiring a prescription, because this is more restrictive. State just passed something, and they said that the local jurisdiction could not do something more restrictive. So we'll have to also remove that restriction.
Recently, the state of Missouri told us that people can ride a motorcycle without a helmet and buy pseudoephedrine willy-nilly.
Yep.
Your
And-
legislature at work.
And they took the extra precaution to say, oh, by the way, local jurisdictions who used to have that authority no longer have that authority. So this is a continuing theme that I've seen over the last 10 years of continuing to reduce local authority in our state.
That just seems like a step backwards in time.
Yeah. So anyway, those are on there in order to be in compliance with state statute. That's the reason they're on there. So I wanted to give you a heads up on those things, just to know about them. And then also wanted to thank Bruce for his work on this. I know I thanked Nicolette this morning, but I know Bruce spent a lot of time getting this set up, as well as getting all that information out to you. And we appreciate his work on that. The only other item I have is legislation. I can talk a little bit about legislation, but I thought rather than do that, I would first entertain subject matter that you all may have you want to talk about, and then if there's time before 4 o'clock, I'll talk a little bit about some legislation items that we anticipate coming up this year.
Tell you the truth, I don't really have anything.
I have a couple questions based on what you just talked about, Scott. Just
Okay.
regarding the process of us listening to the public, especially on items that are not on the agenda. What is the process that we all want to kind of adhere to in terms of when people have concerns or even questions? They sometimes pose those to us, and I'm supportive of us not, engaging or commenting with the public. But is there a process where they can leave their email or number with the city clerk? Is that what they do sometimes? And then would it be most appropriate for Mayor Fox to consult with staff and then get back to that person? Or I guess I'm just wondering, for the person who is genuinely, kind of hoping to hear back from the council or city staff at some point, how do we work that?
I think anybody who has a specific question, whether it's somebody that comes to us with a nuisance issue at a particular site, or they come to us with a problem about, what if it's a sewer or water issue, or just any little issue. Those are things we just refer to staff to investigate and then get back to that person.
Directly.
Every person that comes there gives their name and their address. So we have the capability to get back with them. And I think it makes it more efficient. And lately, there've been a lot of people that have come up and said some things that probably shouldn't be said, or said them in the wrong way. And there's been some talk back and forth, and I want to avoid that. And I think this is one of the best ways we can do that. And if after all of those comments are finished, before we go into agenda review, if there's something that's been brought up, we as a council want to talk about and say, well, let's refer this to staff, or maybe it's in Ward 6, and it's something that you need to talk to somebody about specifically because it's in your ward. That's, a lot of it's just common sense.
Well, we in the past, we have had somebody come, and then I might have Stan go follow them out and or say, hey, y'all can go out and discuss, and then he'll get their name and number and get back to them, or maybe he can answer it right then. So we've done all those different things. Certainly, it's our intent to get back to a genuine question. What we're trying to avoid is kind of getting goaded into an exchange that really isn't productive.
Sure. I understand that. I just know, some people just want to come and present their concern, but some people actually want to have a conversation continue later. And then secondly, about the Sudafed, Scott, what exactly is the state law that we now need to, is there unlimited Sudafed being able to be purchased over the counter now, or what?
I don't have the answer to that question.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if
staff just briefed me that they needed to get this on because in order to align with state law. So I have not read it. I will, we'll be prepared to answer that Monday.
Okay.
And it got brought up to me, and this is just sidebar on the Sudafed thing. I've had probably a half a dozen people say, what the heck? Why you guys still have this archaic, blah, blah, blah. I can go to not Perry County, I can go to whatever county and get it. And I don't know why they did it, but I slept a little bit better at night when Judge Lewis told me that he hasn't had a meth lab bust in Cake County in 7 years or so because it's so cheap and so easy to get it from Mexico that nobody around here is taking the risk when it's so cheap, apparently.
That's exactly what, and speaking in West Blair, or Chief Blair could even speak further on it, and speaking with some of his drug specialists on his staff, I was very enlightened by that at the police experience, citizens experience, when they were telling me, oh yeah, nobody, they don't bust meth labs anymore. You think about the last time you heard of one blowing up like they used to in the 90s, or the early, because it's so cheap, like you said, to get it from Mexico.
Buy it online.
So I heard my name, so I woke up from my nap. Yeah,
All right.
what you guys are saying is absolutely correct. Meth labs are a thing of the past. It doesn't happen anymore. That doesn't mean that meth's not existent in our community anymore, but it's so much cheaper and easier to import from Mexico that the cartels have gotten very big into the meth business and are importing it, which doesn't help our community any. But as far as the home cooks, the people that are cooking out in the woods or anything like that, it doesn't really exist anymore.
Well,
So we
I
get to
mean,
buy
not-
Sudafed now.
So you can buy Sudafed now.
I'm glad about that.
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm not a meth dealer.
And I'm not a meth dealer.
Good.
Thanks.
Thanks, Wes.
Okay.
I don't have anything. Anybody? Bueller?
Shelley, do you have anything you would like to discuss? I can't see you, so I thought I'd ask.
No, not really.
Okay.
I
Not
just, to go in line with the mayor and the new statement at the meetings about not engaging, and I think I'd mentioned this to the mayor also, but just, I would recommend also making a comment about respecting the decorum of the chamber with which you're in, because I think some of the sidebar comments and conversations and potentially disrespectful comments do not have a place in a chamber in my mind. So when someone has the podium, there shouldn't be other people interacting with them from the audience at the risk of being removed, I would think. So.
Agreed.
Scott, you want to just go on to legislation?
Yeah, I'll just talk briefly about it and some of the things as we look at the horizon. Of course, the internet tax, Wayfair, or streamline tax, however you want to talk about it. Certainly that is a top priority, remains a top priority for us. And one of the things that we really need to work on, video lottery machines will again be a push, we believe, certainly if the state is looking for some way of getting additional revenue, they may push that again. That's a subject that we worked very hard on last year to get it defeated, and we're able to. Franchise fees for cable TV is another thing that we got pushed back last year and was able to get it defeated. It actually passed one house and was really pushed hard at the end, but ultimately did not make it. That was a $400,000 to $600,000 hit to us per year if we had lost that. So that's certainly something that we want to be careful of. We want to also continue to work on the Senate Bill 572 issue and try to see if we can restore some of that ability to hold people accountable early on in the process of these nuisance and other problems, and give us that ability to do that. And then lastly, just wanted to kind of check in. We have the violent crime special session that's coming up, and I did not know if council wanted to engage with our representatives and senator regarding support for that. I think certainly with what's going on in our community, it makes some sense for perhaps you to take a public stand or maybe make statements at the Monday session about it. Just kind of throwing that out there that seems like there is a connection there. There also, is always concern too. So that's all I had on those. I just cover them. And if you have any questions, be glad to answer any questions about that. The other item, and I already mentioned it, is local control. Local control continues to be to get eroded in every session. So we're still trying to deal with the erosion of all the local control that you have.
One thing that is kind of different this year is is I asked Nate to be our legislative liaison. But at the same time, I'm still pretty heavily involved in that with a group called Missouri Mayors United. Have a meeting in Columbia next Friday with the powers that be in that group to discuss a lot of these same legislative issues that affect all of our cities. And we're prioritizing those so that we can have at least a chairperson within that group on each topic that will then disseminate information to the other mayors. Hopefully we can get this internet tax passed. I mean, it's a top priority of that group also.
On that same vein, I was going to ask this earlier at the very beginning of the first session, when we were talking about the county tax, and Robbie asked the question versus the tax receipts that we had locally. Is there any way that we're able to track what use tax they were able to collect and then compute what we potentially could have gained if we had a use tax? So as opposed to the loss that we took from COVID, what we could have where we could have potentially have been positioned if we had a use tax, and use that in our favor as to why we need a use tax.
Based on what they collect,
Yeah.
which has been, Scott, if I'm not mistaken, a little over $1 million a year.
Yeah.
And then break that down according to what their percentage is, and then what our percentage would be.
If you base it on what they collect, you can use a formula and show that the city of Cape would collect about $2.5 million based on that. But it's their use tax has gone up 80% this year. Their collection so far. So, and it's going to continue to rise. I don't know how they're going to, their use tax was designated just to go to pay for their courthouse. I don't know whether if they collect a whole lot more money, are they going to pay it off early? Are they going to use that how they're going to use that? I don't know. They came to the voters with the idea that it was going to be strictly to pay off the courthouse. And
then because they passed
up, potentially it could be over $3 million a year for our city.
Yeah, and then the way the use tax is being collected versus if you pass a Wayfair internet tax with the use tax, there will be a whole lot more collection with that. So there's all sorts of sales out there that if you, like the county now, they're not getting all the internet sales. They're getting some of them, but they're not getting all of them. And so that changes a lot too. But to Nate's question, certainly we can have a detailed conversation with them about where are they seeing that extra money that they're getting. If it's because Procter and Gamble is now buying some out of state materials that they weren't buying, then it wouldn't affect us at all. But if it's essentially the same as always, then yeah, we should be getting more. We would be getting more. So that'll reflect in our estimate. So that's a good catch. We ought to have that conversation with them.
Yeah, I just figured it would be a powerful representation of the data as we're continuing to measure what the impact of COVID is, and we're given, we're 400,000 down in this budget, this fund and whatever. They will say, but if we had taken, if we were in line with what the county has seen in the use tax, here's where we would be instead. So
absolutely.
My contention with the state is that if the state passed a true internet tax, they would not have to have made all these cuts to education that they made this year with COVID. They would collect a lot more money. And you got some people saying, well, that's unjust. That goes against the Hancock Amendment. It's not really a new tax. You're taxing items that are already sold in this state. So, they're in a critical situation. The state's in a critical budget situation, and they're going to be looking at VLTs, and they're going to look at this tax a little more seriously, I hope, in order to not continue to have to make cuts, because the governor's going to be faced with another round of cuts later on this year. So
It's literally
Yeah,
just
but-
about modernization of our taxes. I mean, retail is going online at a rapid rate, and we just have to adjust accordingly in order to make sure that we adequately fund our state.
that's right.
You know, back in the day, I'm sure they taxed horses in a different way than they would tax a computer today, but we kept up with those changes. And so the Jefferson City just needs to update. It just needs to modernize the tax code.
Well, and just to give you a way of talking about it, when the mayor says it's not a new tax that you're doing, when the Supreme Court ruled in Quinn that they couldn't collect on catalog sales. Think about that. It's back in the days of catalogs. They didn't actually. The ruling said it's not that it shouldn't be taxed. It's that it's too difficult. So then Wayfair came back and said, hey, wait a second. We live in this world and it's no longer too difficult. There's ways of doing this electronically. So they didn't put in a new tax. They just said it's no longer too difficult to collect it. So why we would apply and say, oh, this is a new tax, I'm at a loss.
Yeah, and Bob's point is right on with their budget crisis that they have there. And then if Amendment 2 passes, they're going to face an even larger deficit with the Medicaid expansion. So,
Well, this whole conversation has become, I think, drastically different just in the past few months. I mean, for several years, we've been really seriously talking about it, right? I mean, for longer than that, I think I'm sure the city and has been talking about it as the internet has grown or whatever. But I mean, we've seen the data in the past 3 to 5 years, or even more or less, I should say. The Amazon and whatever has just completely changed things. But nobody going to have any trouble understanding what we're talking about now since March of 2020. I mean, nobody.
Well, that's why I said, if the legislature does not do something this session, we as a city are going to have to do it ourselves.
Yes, I think it's time to absolutely say that. Yeah.
Well, and unfortunately, all we have the ability to do is the traditional use tax. We don't have the ability to make it internet. And I know that's a caveat, but the caveat's real. It's real money. And but I agree with the mayor that even if we have to do it in phases, we need to do what we can to collect as much as we can. And so yeah, I think that's a good point, Mayor. I think that's one that we would want all council to start, feeling like, yes, if they don't do anything, then we probably need to really look realistically at passing whatever we can pass use tax to move forward.
I have been giving, I guess you'd call it a state of the city or what's going on to different service clubs, and I've got another one next week at Kiwanis, and did one this week at Rotary. I've got one, I did one at Optimist. I've done one at Lions Club. Haven't done one there this year, but I mention that every time, that if the legislature doesn't do something this session, we as a city, we don't have anything on the ballot projected to be on the ballot for 5 years until our next TTF. But this is so critical that we're going to have to do something.
Yeah, agree.
I didn't have anything else, unless Scott's got anything else.
I am done. That's everything I have. Unless anybody has other questions.
10 minutes early. How's that?
Wow. Well, see, Molly is a lot more efficient than I am. Says I went 10 or 15 over. She went 10 under even after we added the stuff. So she said it a lot quicker than I did.
Well, everybody have a great weekend, and we'll see you all Monday. I hear some thunder outside, though. It's going to be a wet night, I think.
Oh, no. And the Cardinals aren't playing. They got 2 players have COVID.
Yep, I know.
mhm.
So everybody have a great weekend.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.